So recently I did a piece on, it wasn't entirely on utility companies in California and focused on San Diego Gas and Electric, but it it related, issues of climate change and damage due to the destruction of fire to the environment and to human life and to animal life and to the ecosystem's ability to repair itself. And I believe that I was focused on the damage that was done to the great, living entities of the giant sequoias. But this relationship between climate change and fires, particularly on the West Coast, where there are ecosystems that depend upon fires, but that have been challenged in the way that they evolve and respond to environmental factors by the overabundance of these ignitions of wildfire, causing instances that typically begin with sparks produced by electrical power lines and other aspects of the way that energy is brought to human beings via these utility systems. And it's not economical for these privately held utility companies to make the kind of profit that they intend to make, and to do it safely. Just like it's not economical for car manufacturers to make electric automobiles and still profit, at the rate that they intend to create, billionaire and multi-billionaire CEOs and expropriate, wealth from their underpaid labor, at the exponential within the exponential framework that they do. And but somehow they don't make that connection between their expectations for the economy and their failure to provide for safety as having something to do with responsibility, right? So last year, PG&E, Pacific Gas and Electric, which is even worse than SDG&E, right? Probably worse because they're the largest utility company in the United States. And if I'm incorrect about that, I'm certainly correct that they're the largest utility company on the West Coast. And I think that they're one of the oldest utility companies as well, which, in terms of responsibility, and we all know that in terms of, maintaining safety, both for workers, and for the community at large, generally, like, having a long history working in and under capitalism is worse than, being new to the system, right? So it's these old. And there's like a certain kind of like status in like having been around for a while, right? Certainly, in all kinds of things. But that status generally that is acquired through the longevity of the ownership of the company is generally in direct proportion with the amount of economic and human damage that company is willing to do. And that's certainly the case with PG&E. Well, last year they admitted to being responsible for the death of 84 individuals and pleaded guilty to manslaughter, but now don't want to be held accountable for that action. It's and I've been thinking about these apologies, like Obama's apology to the Native Americans that the poet, Layli Long Soldier, like very articulately and passionately responded to, in her work. Whereas is okay, a string of pain at this very legally contextualized and guarded apology that was made on behalf of the U.S. government under the Obama administration in relationship to the damages done to Native American peoples. And in this apology, everything that's apologized for is backpedaled in such a way that whereas we admit that this and this and this happened, the admission of this happening will in no way help make us economically or socially accountable for, and we're sorry that there's all of this injustice, but we're not going to do anything about it, and we're not only are we not going to do anything about the past, but we're not going to do anything about the present, right? Because honestly, the only reason that Trump was able to go through with the Dakota Access Pipeline was because Obama didn't put mechanisms in place to begin with when he did. Now, the only difference was that Obama basically deferred everything until later, but didn't in fact accomplish anything that could have prevented the what we saw go on there at Standing Rock, either before or after the Trump administration. And the only difference was that Trump acted like Standing Rock didn't exist. But in any case, PG&E is basically making the same sort of move. Well, we admitted that we were responsible for these 84 counts of manslaughter, but we certainly shouldn't be sued for it. So today in this statement, charges were announced. Shasta County District Attorney Stephanie Bridget announced that the 31 charges, including 11 felonies against PG&E, saying it failed to perform its legal duties and that its failure was reckless and criminally negligent, and it resulted in the death of 4 people. So now they're actually being charged and being held accountable, and then the CEO is claiming that failing to prevent the fire was not a crime. Well, it never is, right? So we did all this to maximize our profit, but it's not. when we did something and we maximized efficiency, or we take credit for it, but when we did something and people died, then it was an accident, right? And this is always industry's excuse. Well, we can't do everything, to stop these fires, because if we did, you wouldn't have power, right? Well, that's not exactly true, because we would have power in any case if power were provided in a safe manner. It's just that you wouldn't be making all of that money, right? And so it's again the corruption of greed and the desire for this certain rate of profit, right? And these profit margins that really preclude safety that is responsible. But this absolute refusal, to accept the responsibility for that. And here again is the same thing. Whereas this was a tragedy and 4 people died, it is not. And whereas, we and whereas my coworkers wish to prevent these things, it is not our responsibility if they come to pass, right? And even in this piece, I can't really look at that fox burnt in the fire. That's too much. Even in this piece, there's no mention of the fact that in addition to their failure to provide safe power lines, right, and to clear the area around their power lines in a safe manner. In addition to that, they're largely responsible for the climate changes that foster, right, the spread of these emissions, of these that spread the ignitions, right, of these many sparks that their power lines make. Meaning that if PG&E, if SDG&E, were committed to solar power production throughout, California and the rest of, and for PG&E's case, in the rest of the West, the likelihood of many of these ignition sparks turning into massive wildfires would be much less, because they wouldn't be producing the very conditions, right, that challenge ecosystems and create the opportunity for these blazes. And yet, when one tries to put, solar power, even if you own your own solar power panels, these companies find ways of exploiting the power that your system is making for their profit. And by doing that, they really mitigate the motivation that one would need to put in solar as a property owner and as a responsible member of the community. And so on multiple levels, they're responsible for these fires. And yet, because we have this history of, the natural disaster, we imagine that, that these things are inevitable. Well, it's true that fires in certain ecosystems are inevitable, but it's not true that these fires cause this much damage to this much area. And the reason for that phenomena is that these companies are responsible for climate change. And that's not addressed in this article. And that's what should be addressed in this article. And it's not like that I'm the only one who is aware of it, right? You know, this is why we need to listen to environmental science and take it seriously, because it's not just a matter of this abstract destruction of our planet. It's something that is happening right now, and it's something that's being fought about in the courts, even if it doesn't come up in the language of what's being spoken in the courts, because they'll never talk about climate change in relationship to the responsibility of PG&E and this fire, right? They'll never talk about everything that I'm talking about. It won't enter into the courtroom, but it should. And you know, and until it becomes something that is familiar in the popular consciousness and accepted as, you know, what I'm trying to say is that, like, capital does all of this stuff like to hide like it's damaged, and until like people become aware, like very consciously aware, and very, you know, that, and that consciousness is very much on the surface of their thought, you know, then the real responsibility and the real issues of damage will always be hidden, will always be masked. And then, you know, in instances like this, where even if PG&E is held accountable for this instance, the system of destruction will go on. And it's very much like the piece that I did on the Biden administration and these images of Haitian, these Pan-African peoples, you know, being whipped by white individuals on horseback wearing, you know, sheriff's hats, looked bad. But and so we're not going to have, you know, we're not going to have border patrol on horses anymore, because it made Biden's administration feel like they looked bad by deporting these Haitians. But until we like have the compassion to understand why the Haitian peoples are displaced in the first place and do something about that and stop shipping them home to a place where the resources will not support their lives, then we have failed. And whatever the outcome is on and the decision is on these cases of manslaughter that PG&E is being held accountable for, it's still, and as horrible as, you know, committing these crimes are, the way that the case plays out will still be very much cosmetic until like the deeper issues are understood, and until companies are held accountable in terms of their responsibility to the larger environment of planet Earth. And until that happens, you know, we'll just see instances of this again and again and again. And we'll see instances of CEOs refusing to take responsibility for their actions, and we'll see instances of this playing out in the courts in very trivial ways, in which whatever the decision is, you know, the basic thinking doesn't change. And so that's why, you know, I guess that's why I do what I do. William Blake has a line in which I think he's describing John the Baptist, and he says, you know, or maybe it's even prior to William Blake. I don't know that John the Baptist is described this way, but a voice crying in the wilderness. And for many years, in fact, many decades, I have felt my work to be that voice crying in the wilderness. And not only that, you know, do people not listen to it, but the really funny thing is that I have often felt that people don't even hear it, you know, don't get it, don't like it's a different language, and they can't see it. So when I see, you know, something like this, a building in flame, want to say, like, as this, voice crying in the wilderness, is like, don't you see the fire? You can't see it. As Denny, said in a piece that I made, well, it's nearly 40 years ago now, but are there fires in the mountains? Are the fires blazing in the mountains? Is there destruction in the mountains? Do people die in the fires? Are the fires being put out? Are the individuals responsible for the fires being held accountable for the fires? Are the CEOs who profit on the energy system made to be unsafe in order to maximize profit willing to admit their responsibility for the fires? How do we pay for profit in the mountains? Do we pay with the fires?